On behalf of the city, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the overview of the planning process to prepare the city's hazard mitigation plan. As a bit of background, the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 was passed by Congress to reduce the loss of life and property, human suffering, economic disruption, and disaster assistance costs resulting from natural disasters. Disasters can cause loss of life, damage to buildings and infrastructure, and have devastating consequences on a community's economic, social, and environmental well-being. Hazard mitigation reduces disaster damage and is defined by FEMA as sustained actions taken to reduce or eliminate the long-term risk to human life and property from hazards. Examples of mitigation actions include outreach programs that increase risk awareness, projects to protect critical facilities, and the removal of structures from flood hazard areas. In 2019, the National Institute of Building Sciences issued an update to its landmark report, Natural Hazard Mitigation Saves. The study analyzed the benefit-cost ratio of a range of mitigation activities, including mitigation planning and building retrofits. The findings revealed a dramatic return on investment. For mitigation activities, every dollar spent yielded a $6 return on avoided losses in the future. Also, for building retrofits, every dollar spent yielded a $4 return on avoided losses in the future. According to the National Institute of Building Sciences report, the benefits of mitigation include reductions in deaths, injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorder, property repair costs for damaged buildings and contents, additional living expenses including sheltering costs for displaced households, direct business interruption, including loss of revenue and other business interruption costs to businesses whose property is damaged. Also, indirect business interruption, including loss of economic activity in the broader community. And lastly, urban search and rescue reduced costs. In 2023, FEMA issued new standards regarding preparation of hazard mitigation plans. In addition to the previous regulations from 2011, jurisdictions are now required to discuss climate change and the impacts on natural hazards. Also, now there are standards requiring focused outreach to disadvantaged communities and socially vulnerable populations. Mitigation plans are key to breaking the cycle of disaster damage and reconstruction. Mitigation planning begins with state, tribal, and local governments identifying natural disaster risks and vulnerabilities that are common in their area. After identifying these risks, they develop long-term strategies for protecting people and property from similar events. Local governments are eligible to prepare a mitigation plan and receive mitigation funds through federal and state grants, as well as funds following a major disaster. The purpose of today's overview is to introduce the planning process used by the city to prepare the mitigation plan. FEMA's 2023 Local Mitigation Planning Handbook identifies a planning process with 4 steps. Step number 1 is to organize the planning process and resources, which include creation of a planning team to assist with research and writing, as well as the development of a community outreach strategy. Step number 2 is to assess risks and capabilities, including a risk and vulnerability assessment, as well as a review of the city's capabilities to respond to and recover from a major disaster. Step number 3 is to develop a mitigation strategy, which includes a comprehensive list of mitigation actions and projects. Step number 4 is to adopt and implement the plan, which includes a formal review by Cal OES and FEMA and the adoption of the plan by the City Council. This is the 4-step planning process followed by the city's planning team. The community outreach strategy consisted of 2 phases. The first phase was announcing the planning process, which included posting of the hazard mitigation survey, presentations at public forums including the City Council, commissions, and city volunteer groups, public notices on the city's website, Facebook, X, and Instagram concerning the mitigation plan, development and posting of today's hazard mitigation overview video, and development of the initial draft plan by the planning team. The second phase is gathering input on the draft plan, which will include inviting the public and stakeholders to provide input to the plan. FEMA-mandated stakeholders include local and regional regulatory agencies, neighboring jurisdictions, businesses, academia, and community lifelines, and nonprofit and community-based organizations with a focus on underserved communities and socially vulnerable populations. Community lifelines are the vital services in a community. When stabilized, they enable all other aspects of society to function. The 7 services include safety and security, food, water, and shelter, health and medical, energy, which includes power and fuel, communications, transportation, and hazardous material. Identifying hazards with the potential for significant impacts involved reviewing a range of hazard-focused studies and plans. The hazard identification process included review of FEMA's list of 18 hazards that are recommended for consideration, California's State Hazard Mitigation Plan, including top hazards earthquake, flood, and wildfire, and the County of Los Angeles's All Hazards Mitigation Plan, which identifies climate change, dam failure, earthquake, flood, landslide, tsunami, and wildfire as major hazards. The planning team also considered the hazards identified in the city's general plan and previous hazard mitigation plan. The city's capabilities were mentioned in the previous slide. One of FEMA's requirements is to identify existing capabilities to increase resilience. Also, the mitigation plan is required to identify ways to expand existing capabilities. The capability categories include planning and regulatory, administrative and technical, financial, and education and outreach. The mitigation strategy section of the plan includes the plan goals as well as methods for coordinating with the general plan and capital improvement program. Most importantly, the mitigation strategy includes a comprehensive range of actions and projects capturing ongoing activities along with ideas for the future. Although the lifespan of the plan is only 5 years, there's no harm in identifying projects that will take 10 or even 20 years to complete. Each action item identifies a lead department, timeline, plan goals met, projected funding source, benefits, costs, and priorities. Here's an example of a mitigation action item. Purchase and install generators at all city-owned facilities. Following drafting of the plan by the planning team and gathering input from the public and other stakeholders, the document will be submitted to Cal OES for a formal review. Utilizing FEMA's plan review tool and updated regulations, the Cal OES staff will review the city's plan for conformance. Once Cal OES is satisfied with all of the requirements have been met, the document is forwarded to FEMA. Altogether, the formal review typically lasts 4 to 6 months. Once FEMA is satisfied, a letter will be sent authorizing the city to take the document to the City Council for adoption. When proof of adoption is received, FEMA will issue a letter of approval. This concludes the hazard mitigation overview. Please watch for the posting of the draft hazard mitigation plan. We look forward to hearing your questions, thoughts, and suggestions. On behalf of the city, thank you for taking time to learn about the importance of increasing resilience through mitigation planning.